Chapter 7. 2 Weddings. This chapter is about 2 weddings in 2 different countries. The first wedding was in England. Graham and Kendra got married in London in summer 2009. They are English, but they met in Bosnia in 2005. I proposed to Kendra there in February 2009. On a mountain, in the snow, said Graham. I gave her a ring and other presents, and we went out to dinner that evening. We then began to get ready for the wedding, said Kendra. We wanted to get married at my church. This was All Souls Church, a beautiful old building on Regent Street in London. The day of the wedding was the 18th of July, in the summer. It was a good time for the wedding because a lot of people have a holiday at that time of year. 2 weeks before the wedding, I had a wonderful hen day with my friends, laughed Kendra. I remember it very well. We all met in Regent's Park in London and stayed there for a day. Graham and his friends went to Bath in the west of England for his stag night. They had a nice dinner and some drinks together. Then the day the wedding arrived. It was a warm Saturday in July, remembered Graham. Guests came from the UK and from Bosnia, Bulgaria, the USA and Afghanistan too. Kendra had 3 bridesmaids. Her sister, my sister, and a friend from Bosnia. My best man was my friend Harris, and we had groomsmen. The colours for our wedding were dark blue and gold, said Kendra. So the bridesmaids wore dark blue dresses, and the groomsmen all had dark blue shirts. I wore a long white dress and carried white and gold flowers. Our wedding was a traditional ceremony in the church, and after that we had a lot of photos in Regent's Park. Later, there was a big reception with dinner and speeches. We then went to Italy by plane for our honeymoon. We had a week by the sea near the town of Pisa, and then 3 exciting days in Rome before we came back to England. Many of the things in the wedding were traditional, said Graham. For example, I didn't see Kendra on the morning of the wedding, and she wore a white dress. But some things were different. For example, we had a wedding cake, but it didn't have any flowers. Kendra and I love visiting different countries, and we have friends from all over the world. So we had a wedding cake with a lot of flags all over it. There was a little world too, with a bride and groom on it. The second wedding was in Japan. Eri is Japanese and her husband Carl is British. We met at work in Tokyo, said Eri. Carl proposed to me in July 2007 in Paris. It's famous for love, of course. When we went to Japan, he gave me a beautiful ring. But we didn't have an engagement party. Our wedding was in Kyoto on a sunny day in April 2008, and remembered Carl. In spring, there are beautiful flowers on many of the trees, so it was a good time for the wedding. The weather in spring is usually too. Eri wore a traditional white kimono, and she had red and yellow flowers in her hair. I wore a long black kimono. Our families came to the ceremony, and some of them wore kimonos too. People wore black that day. It's traditional. In the evening, we had a big dinner with everybody from our two families. The reception was the next day in Osaka, about 50 kilometers away, said Eri. I wore a white wedding dress for this, and Carl wore a dark suit. Some of the other women wore kimonos for the reception, but most people wore dresses or suits. I didn't have any bridesmaids at the wedding or the reception. It's not traditional in Japan. Some of our guests came from other countries, like Germany and the UK. At the reception, we cut our wedding cake together. It was very tall, taller than us. There were a lot of speeches too, and we all laughed for a long time. Then I read a letter to my parents. In the letter, I said thank you to them. I cried, and nearly everybody at the reception began to cry too. Like Graham and Kendra, Eri and Carl love visiting different countries. People usually have pictures of flowers or animals on the table at the reception, said Carl. But Eri and I visited so many countries together, so we had flags and photos from those countries on the tables. There was a flag from France, of course. Some guests gave us presents, most gave us money. In Japan, the bride and groom give presents to their guests too. And Eri and I did this. Eri and I wanted to have honeymoon in Australia and New Zealand, but we could not go away. My family from the UK stayed for a holiday in Japan after the wedding, so we visited lots of interesting towns with them and took some wonderful photos.